Okay, hello. I'm Mad Dog Maxx, and this is part one of my PWL question and answer sessions. You'll have to bear with me a little bit on this because it's very, very weird for me speaking into a camera and not a person, or not having an audience or a person to bounce off. So this might be a little bit clunky or a little bit weird. First of all, I just want to thank so many people for sending so many questions to me, to the point that we've had to break down this into a series of questions and do maybe a part 2 or a part 3 later on, simply because you sent so many questions and it was really hard to whittle them down because so many of them were really valid and really good questions. So I'll do the first part now, and if it doesn't bore you to death, I'll record another part depending on how much you liked it or whether you want to see it or whatnot. So sorry if it's a bit weird. I feel uncomfortable because I'm not talking to a physical person or a physical audience. So yeah, it's strange really. But we'll get through the questions and hopefully you'll find it interesting. I've got a bit of different format to everybody else because I'm now good at stopping and starting the camera, and I'm not very good with technology. So I'm just going to hopefully just do all this through in one go, put it on YouTube, and then you guys can have a look at it. That's about it really. Oh yeah, and I should thank all the other people that have done a Q&A before me, because I almost was very reluctant to do one. I don't like this kind of thing normally, which is odd because on a weekend I put Lycra on and I jump around in front of an audience and I appear very, very confident, but I don't quite like the sound of my own voice, and I don't watch things back. So it's a bit cringeworthy because while I'm recording this, I'm looking into the camera and I can see myself doing it. So I'm very conscious. You might see me adjust my beard or kind of suck my belly in or something. So I'm sorry if I seem awkward, but I feel awkward. So, you know, hopefully that'll go after a couple of questions and it'll be easier. Okay. So, first question has come from Shanti, and she's asked, what inspired you to get into wrestling? So what inspired me to get into wrestling? Could probably be a bit of a long-winded one really, but I don't want to bore you to death. So I'll try and give you an answer as quick as I can, Shanti, so you're not falling to sleep at the end of it. Essentially, first match I ever saw on TV was Bret Hart, and I was always a big comic book fan, as you can see, Superman and Batman behind me, and vast comic book collection to my right ear and that kind of thing, and my X-Men tattoo. I've always been a superhero fan, big time. And what I liked about Bret, this sounds so weird, but it was the boots and the tights and then the trunks over the top of the tights, very much like Superman, and the singlet, and just the look of him, rather than just seeing wrestlers in trunks, which, you know, I do, so I'm not criticising them because I often just wear a pair of trunks nowadays. But he looked like a superhero to me. And all it was his entrance. He had the leather jacket on and the wet hair and the sunglasses and that awesome music, you know, and he walked down and like my jaw dropped because it was like a real life superhero that I saw in the ring. And then he had his match and I was hooked on watching wrestling from that point. In sort of the middle years of my fandom of a wrestler, I watched several British wrestling shows in and around my hometown. And those guys kind of inspired me as well because they were British and they looked a little bit more like me, and maybe they were a bit more pale, and, you know, they weren't as tanned as Ric Flair or Hulk Hogan, but in honesty, they were actually a bit better talented. You know, they were very, very good than your average wrestler on TV anyway, not everyone, but they were awesome. And then I kind of fell out of wrestling a little bit. I kind of stopped watching it. And my dad kind of got me back into it again. We were watching WCW and Goldberg and the NWO and that kind of thing. And I still never had it set that I wanted to be a wrestler. I just enjoyed watching it. Like, don't get me wrong, as a kid, I was a super fan. I had all the Hasbro figures. I had several Hulk Hogans, a little Ric Flair. I had Yokozuna. I had all these Hasbro figures and my little wrestling ring. And I played with it that much that I broke the plastic wrestling ring. Some of you guys might remember the old WCW ring, and it had sound effects on it as well. And oddly, I'd play with mostly my Hasbro figures. I only had a Flair, a Sting and a Luger, I think, from WCW. These like fixed post wrestlers, but I had the WCW ring with all the sound effects, which was awesome. And then a load of Hasbros. I was obsessed with wrestling. But even when I got back into it in my teens and I watched it with my dad late night, like Goldberg and Scott Hall and all them, I still never had it set to be a wrestler. And then Royal Rumble 2000, so I'm guessing January-ish, I'm bad with dates, 2000, Mick Foley wrestled as Cactus Jack against Triple H at the Royal Rumble, and it was for the world title. And that match sold me on wanting to be a professional wrestler. There was actually one moment, but it was the whole match, not just the card. The show was brilliant. I think you had the Dudleys on it and the Hardys, and the individual Rumble was really good as well. You had some great talent in that. But it was that one match, and it was one moment that made me go, and I actually said it, there was a little bit where Mick Foley takes the pedigree off Triple H, and Jim Ross, being a completely amazing commentator, he's like, Triple H has hit the pedigree, boom, and he's covering him. And as he's covering him, Jim Ross is doing an amazing job of selling the match, which is his job. He's going, by God, nobody kicks out of the pedigree. Nobody kicks out of the pedigree. Obviously, years later, I found out many people had kicked out the pedigree, including Ultimate Warrior, who took it and stood back up and had a little jog. But at this point, my wrestling history wasn't bang on because I'd fell in and out of love with it or whatnot. And I'd only recently, that year or two, got back into it. So I just believed everything he was saying. I was like, oh my God, I don't want Mick Foley to lose. And he kicked out of the first pedigree, and I was just amazed. And me and my brother were sitting on the floor watching this in our like old council house with like a, concrete floor with like a carpet that thick over it, And as he kicked out, I was that shocked, because I was buying into Jim Ross's commentary, that I rolled backwards in amazement, and I hit my head on the floor, and it stung, it was really hurting. And I sat back up, and I looked at my brother. No, I sat back up, and I mouthed out, I want to be a professional wrestler. I said it, and as I said that, Mick Foley had already took a second pedigree into a load of thumbtacks, and he was losing. He was 1, 2, 3, and my favourite wrestler was in the process of losing his big world title fight. But all I blurted out, and I looked at my brother, and we fixed eyes, and we were like, yeah, that's a really good idea. And the very next day, I was literally bugging my careers officer at school. And within a couple of weeks or months, I'd found a school in Birmingham. And to give you an idea, that would have been early 2000. By August 2000, I'd already had my first match. But that's the kind of long-winded 5-minute answer of what inspired me to want to be a professional wrestler. I could have probably stretched that out to be an hour, really, because of all the wrestling I've watched over the years, and all the great things I've seen. But yeah, that's about it, really. It was just amazing, that single moment, and I would say that's what inspired me to be a professional wrestler. I hope that's okay. So look at question 2. Right, Jess Wilson has asked me, why did I choose my wrestling name? That's a bit of a crap one, really. It's funny though, for those a bit older like me, you'll remember the references that I'm about to make, and you'll chuckle. I had an old PlayStation 1. Well, it weren't old at the time, it was new. I had a PlayStation 1 game, again, being obsessed with wrestling at that age, and it was called WWF, because it was WWF at the time. The Giant Panda hadn't took the initials off him. WWF Attitude, that was the game. I had 2 favourite computer games growing up, or as a teen anyway. One was WWF Attitude, and one was WCW Mayhem. And I loved Mayhem probably a little bit better because the vast array of roster that you could pick from, because WCW had the biggest roster, I think, maybe ever at that point anyway. And lots of them were on the game. And I also loved on WCW Mayhem that you could brawl backstage and all these weird settings. It was just fantastic. But Attitude I had as well. I loved that. I loved them both. And on Attitude, you could make your own wrestler. And what I found cool at the time, you'd make your own custom wrestler, which is funny because if you look at how the wrestler looked, how I wanted to look as a 15-year-old kid, it was nothing how I look now. I think the guy kind of like, he was dressed like he was Road Dogg, but in red rather than green. And he had like the head and mullet of Jerry Saggs from the Nasty Boys. So I never got the mullet, and I was never 6'4", but I just made it how I thought, or, just being childish. But when it came to picking the name, there was maybe 10, 15, 20 stock names that you could pick. And I keep trying to not look at myself, it's weird. There was 20, say 10, I don't know, stock names you could pick. And if you picked one of those, the commentators on the game, like I think it was Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler on that game, the commentators would say, oh, Mad Dog's got a headlock on, or Mad Dog's done a clothesline or something like that. And I thought that was brilliant. I just loved it, and then from that point on, I was Mad Dog, and I was obsessed with it. And the first promoter that booked me, he was like, "Oh, what are you going to be called?" And I was like, "Mad Dog." And he went, "You don't look much like a Mad Dog. You're only 15 and about 8 stone soaking wet." And I was like, "Please, please, please," because I was I was set on that name. And luckily, he took a bit of pity on me, and he let me have my name. And I haven't looked back since. That was 20 years ago, So there you go. That's how I got my name. It's not the best story ever, but it's true. Next question, Matthew Foster. All right, mate. Matthew Foster has asked, who were your biggest role models in wrestling growing up? I've kind of answered that in a way. Growing up, it was my favourite. So obviously Bret Hart at first, because he was what I thought was the real life superhero with his tights and his trunks and his spandex, just like Superman back there. And then obviously Mick Foley, who took that move, and I thought that, like, I read his book. I remember reading Mick Foley's book as it came out. The first one, I think he's released probably 8 now. But the first book that came out, New York Times bestseller, and it was on Raw every week being plugged. And he was quite the role model because he had a good outlook on things, and yeah. So I suppose my favourite wrestlers, who I've detailed earlier, were my role models. And then when I got into wrestling, the older wrestlers I would look up to and have a lot of respect for them as well. But yeah, I think I've kind of answered that. Sorry, Matt, I've ruined your question in a way. Next one, Claire Caddick has asked me, how did you choose your entrance music? Well, I was told something very, very clever early on in my career. And it was like, don't pick your favourite piece of music to come out to if it doesn't suit your character. Pick a piece of music that suits the character you're trying to do. So I would have liked to have come out to Black Sabbath or something, which I did later, many years later, when it did suit my gimmick. But at the time, partially because I was such a Mick Foley fan, or punter, as people would say, or mark or whatever, I was a complete mark for Mick Foley. I played a demented character, hence Mad Dog Maxx, mad. And I played a nutter, an absolute nutter. I hate saying played. I'm going to want to delete that now, I'm joking. Yeah, well, I was a nutter, but I probably was a nutter anyway. It wasn't a far stretch for me to do it. I was, wasn't 100% normal. I still ain't. But yeah, I was a, psychopath. So I thought it was really important that I had some music that was odd, if that makes sense. And my granddad Ed, bless him, liked his old music, and he had an old Mario Lanza album, and I was going through it. I said, "Grandad, let me look at your CDs. I need some entrance music." And he laughed at me. He said, "There'll be nothing you wanting that lot, And I went through, and Mario Lanza, this big booming voice and this big operatic background, he sung "Joy to the World, the Saviour has come." And it's like, it's a really slow song with horns and, classical music over the top. And he booms this "Joy to the World, the Saviour has come." And I thought it would fit me because I was that deranged that maybe I thought that I was the saviour or something like that. There wasn't much rationale behind it, but I knew that it was better than having, Disturbed, because I think when I got in, everybody had Disturbed, or that German band. Yeah, there was a German band, and a lot of people had that for music, and a lot of people had very similar sorry, I got an email, and another one. Very similar entrance musics. So I picked something completely off the wall, just "Joy to the World, the Saviour has come," Mario Lanza, this operatic number from the 50s or 60s or something, but it suited my character. Then the promoter turned me, the fans turned me, the fans kind of started cheering me because I think because I was so weird, I don't know, they latched on to me, and the fans started cheering me. So the promoter started pushing me as, start using me as a fan favourite, or whatever you want to call it. And he picked my music then, and I didn't have much choice in it, which was a shame because I hated it. But it was at the same time, do you remember the song "Who Let the Dogs Out"? That was high up in the charts, and my promoter, my teacher, Steve Logan, he kind of strong-armed me, roll up the back, he kind of strong-armed me into using "Who Let the Dogs Out." But I must go back to my original statement, even though I hated that song, like, still to this day, when it comes on, I'm like, oh, cringe, It suited my wrestling character. It suited how upbeat I'd become, and how kind of like, that fan favourite I'd become. So I used that for the longest time, because he made me. And then kind of like when I could get away from that because it was out the charts and it wasn't so popular, anymore. I came out to, these are all over years as well. This is not just like, you know, in the space of a month. This is over years. I think the shortest one I had was Who Let the Dogs Out, because I hated it and because it kind of fell out the charts, luckily, you know. But after that, I used Crazy Train by Ozzy Osbourne. Again, crazy, the theme of my gimmick, you know. I was crazy, but it was still upbeat for me to be a fan favourite. So, you know, crazy, and, you know, I'd tap everyone's hand as I ran to the ring, so it suited my gimmick. Then after that, I might be missing a few little bits out, but my memory's shot. Too many chair shots, too many pile drivers. You know, my memory's gone. But after Crazy Train, I was then featured as a villain for a very long time. Then I was the bad guy right up until we started promoting our own shows in Darlaston. But even then, I was a bad guy for 6 months before that. So then I came out to I by Black Sabbath. It's odd because Ozzy was always my favourite. That's why I was dying. I mentioned wanting to use Black Sabbath at the start, earlier in the question. But this was off an album where Ozzy wasn't singing. Ronnie James Dio was singing. But the lyrics just resonated with me. It was I, all alone and all this. And it very much suited the villainy that I was doing at the time. It was suited what I did. On several holiday camps, thanks to Bob Barrett, it's your fault, Bob, I used to come out to Jump by Van Halen. But again, that suited my gimmick because I would come out loads of energy. I was the fan favourites on the holiday camps, tapping everyone's hand. So Jump got them all going. You know, that got them up right up there. But the longest one I ever used was I by Black Sabbath, and that suited my gimmick. And I forgot my own piece of advice that I was given, really, because when I turned good guy, I'd used I that long that I almost relied on it as a clutch. And people would say, you know, even after the show when I was a good guy, you know, I'd become a fan favourite again after many years. They would say, oh God, what's your entrance music? I love it. It was the start. It's like this guitar solo and it sounds something like Mad Out of the Wild West. You know, people, I want to download your entrance music. So I kind of didn't change it, even though it didn't suit me being the hero in Darlaston and surrounding areas. But I was reliant on it, really. And then years after that, I kind of realised, come on, Matt, it doesn't suit what you're doing now. And there was fans starting to come that never remembered or never had seen me as a villain. So my music, again, had stopped suiting my character. So I started using Airwolf, 80s Airwolf TV theme, because I loved that, absolutely loved that. And in recent years, I've used Wicked Ones. I think it's Night Call Wicked Ones or something like that. The young kids will tell you what it's called. That they found it, man. I absolutely love it. Just gets all the crowd clapping, gooey. But I'd like to think that every music choice I've ever had over the years is because it's attached to my character rather than it being one of my favourite songs. Don't get me wrong, with the exception of probably Mario Lanza, and I loved it because it was my granddad's, but I didn't really like the theme. And Who Let the Dogs Out. I've liked all my music, but that was a happy coincidence. I hope that answers your question and kind of almost might advise other wrestlers, young wrestlers, when they're picking their music, you know, pick your something that suits your gimmick and that gets your character over and the crowd can attach themselves to. If you're a villain and your music gets them going, like, yeah, I love this, yeah, this is great, you've already got off on the wrong foot. How are they going to boo you? They're already nodding their head and smiling to your music. You come out, they're like, yeah, then you go, shut up, and then they go, oh, is he a bad guy? I kind of love his music. You're already off on a foot anyway. So, you know, pick something that suits you, you know. That's it, really. I'll turn that into a seminar. Sorry, Claire, I probably bored you half to death with your answer. Bethany Billingham. Hello, Beth. What 2 wrestling moves are your favourites? That's funny. What 2? Not 1 or 3. That's quite funny. I'm very, very simple wrestler. If you watch my matches, which I'm guessing you do, you guys, because obviously you've written these questions in for me. I'm a very simple wrestler. I don't, you know, flip about and I don't flop about. And the moves that I love are very, very basic, but I get a lot of joy out of doing them just bang on. And just getting a good reaction from the crowd out of just doing them basic things bang on. So my answer might not interest you all that much, but my absolute favourite move in all the world when it's executed properly is just the flying knee drop. Just snap them over hit the ropes or take a few steps back, launch yourself up and come down with a knee drop. Now for me, it's got to be right across the head or the bridge of the nose or in the head region. You know, I don't like a knee drop to the chest. Well, it's up to other wrestlers if they do it, but I just don't find it beautiful. And at the end of the day, you're asking me my favourite move, so I'm telling you. A knee drop like Ric Flair would do, a very good one. I think Dynamite Kid did the best knee drop of all time. And several wrestlers do a great knee drop right to the bunts. And that's my favourite move. I don't always do it, but there are several pictures of me on my Facebook. Because whenever I am launched through the air and someone gets a picture, I'm like, oh, I want that. You know, I'll save that to my phone. And I use it a lot. So yeah, the flying knee drop is the first one. And I think the second one's probably me Enziguri. It's probably like the semi-athletic, flashy move that I do when I don't do athletic and flashy moves. I'll tend to use it in my comeback because it's good to just knock someone off the guard and try and get a pin. And you know, yeah, so it's just me Enziguri kick, which is just step off the hip and then swing the right foot round the back of the head or to the side of the head, whatever you can catch really, and knock them unawares really. So pretty boring answer, but flying knee drop is my favourite. Then behind that, probably, you know, the Enziguri. And if you were to ask me a third, and I'm going to pretend you did, it's another simple one, but I love it, and it always gets a nice reaction, and I like it when I can get a bit of height as well. It's a simple move. I like coming off the top rope with me double axe handle, you know, that boom right to the top of the head. It's a very, very simple move, very, very old school move. It's not flashy or brilliant, but it gets the job done, and people cheer when I do it, and I like doing it, and I liked watching it when I was a kid. So yeah, knee drop, Enziguri, and you ain't asked, but I'm telling you anyway. Double axe handle off the top. Yeah, so very simple. I'm sorry if that's bored you. Okay, Helen Michelle Wright. Hello, Helen. Hope you're okay, mate. Who is your ideal tag team partner? Oh, well, that's easy. It's Johnny Thunder. I'm already in a tag team with him. We're very, very different. Whereas I'm not flashy, he's flashy. I'll drink beer, he'll drink Lambrini. I'll scream and shout, he'll talk completely eloquently. We're very different, but we have a shared sense of humour. We make each other giggle in the matches when we're not getting our heads kicked in anyway. And we just complement each other very, very much. I've had some great tag team partners over the years. Some brilliant ones, in fact. You know, famous and non-famous alike. But it's just Johnny Thunder. He's my current partner. He's where I have most fun, and that's an easy answer, really. Easy question, easy answer. I hope that was okay. Shanti again has asked me, how long have I wrestled for? 20 years. Yeah, started in 2000, still going now. There you go. Easy question. Thanks. Pam Pugh. If you had the chance of competing for one belt, what would it be? That's an easy one. It's close to home again. As you guys know who watch us all around, I've had many a battle with Japanese star Tamura. I've wrestled him here in the UK. I've wrestled him in Japan. I've had dealings with him in Europe as well. He's one of my best opponents. I've never beat him. I've only ever drew with him. That's the best result I've had. I think he's pinned me 2 or 3 times, and we've had one very decent time limit draw, I think. And that's about it, really. I've never knocked him off his perch, and he's the PWL World's Heavyweight Champion, and I want that. You know, that's the belt that's close to me. We were in the tournament for it. I went to the final. It was a fully international tournament with Kevin Phoenix and Red Eagle, you know, Portugal, America, Japan, England. I was very proud of the tournament because it was very international, you know, to crown a world title. It needed to be international. I didn't want to put 4 lads from, you know, Cheslin A against each other. It would take the legitimacy away from what it was. So I recruited people from all around, Europe, America, Japan, different continents and whatnot. And we had a great tournament for it, but unfortunately for me, but more fortunately for, you know, how the belt's perceived, I suppose, Tamura won it and took it off to Japan. And it's been defended several times out there, which I'm honoured, you know, to be attached to PWL and to know that world's title is out there being defended is amazing. But I want the world title back down these ends where it belongs, you know. So yeah, that's the belt I'd like to compete for. Yeah. Right, next question then. I've got to turn the page. That's all right, ain't it? Let's have a look. Keith Wilson. Hello, big man. You all right, mate? We know you have brought lots of international talent to PWL. Yeah. But is there one that you'd love to bring more than anyone else? Yeah, there is. But I'll speak plain and honestly, he's simply out of my price tag. I don't think I could afford him. You know, there's certain levels of things where, you know, just reality sets in. But I would absolutely adore to bring Ric Flair in to do an interview or to do just a talking piece, or maybe if we're lucky, he'd put one on someone. Very closely behind him would be Terry Funk. And closely behind him would be Jerry Lawler, but I don't know if we'll ever get any of them. You know, I think Funk stopped touring. I don't think he's about. This COVID thing might stop older wrestlers wanting to travel. You know, they might not want to get on planes and risk breathing things in or whatnot. I can't answer how that's going to be post-lockdown. I don't know. I don't think I could afford Flair. That's just my gut feeling. You know, I don't know. We once came very close to signing Roddy Piper. We crossed some of the I's and we dotted we dotted some of the I's and we crossed some of the T's, and he passed away very shortly after the negotiations had started. So that was an absolute wounder. Piper was one of my favourites, and primarily I do that, bring those people in as a businessman, and I knew that Piper, Flair, Funk, Lawler, I knew that, of the same ilk, I knew that Piper would have drawn us an astronomical crowd, and we were in very early stages of negotiating, and he very unfortunately passed away, so that hurt a lot. But yeah, any one of those three, I guess, Keith. I hope that's all right, mate. I'm probably missing some off, I don't know, I'm just going off the top of my head. I'm rehearsed this, you see. Right, next question. Oh, I got two off Debbie Holst. Hello, Debbie. Hello, I hope you're all right, mate. I got two. Do you worry if Elise or Haya might get injured? Well, yeah, of course. I mean, you know, Haya's me daughter and Elise is my wife, and they've both started wrestling. I did discourage Haya. And many of my kids from wanting to get into wrestling, because I have seen the harsher side of it and the more painful side of it. I have seen very bad injury as well, and that's not something to be discussed here on this, but I've seen very bad injury happen as well, and that's had a huge effect on my life and how I view it and how I view things. So, of course, I worry about them, but I worry about myself, and I worry about all my trainees as if they're going to get injured, whether it be major or minor. You know, I worry, of course I do. I think it would be ridiculous if I didn't worry about them in that regard, Debbie, but at the same point, every wrestler that ducks his head through that rope, another email, I think, every wrestler that ducks his head through that rope to get in the ring is aware that they risk injury every time they get in. But that doesn't stop me from fearing it at all. No, yeah, of course I do, is the answer to that, Debbie. Hard question to answer, really, with an easy answer, if that makes sense. The second part of your question, do you have a protege, as in someone who wants to learn and take over one day? Probably not to take over. I mean, somebody will, of course, at some point. Everybody, you know, departs, and wrestling is very much like a machine, and we're all a different cog in that machine. And if one cog breaks, you take it out and you put another cog in, or if a piston stops being a piston, you take it out, or you fill it with WD-40 or whatever and you replace the part. So, of course, someone will, but I'm only 35. I know I look a lot older, but I started wrestling when I was 15, and that's aged me. All the bumps and all the late nights and all the roads, you know, all the miles on the road or in the plains or whatever, it's aged me, so I know I look older. I'm only 35. So I've not got no plans for anyone to replace me, if that's what you mean. But I do have several proteges, you know. Probably Leon Jackson's probably the prime protege I've got, but I also love Cam Wellington and Nick Powers and all those young wrestlers. I'd class them as proteges because I give them advice and I talk to them in depth about different elements of the game. I remember recently, before lockdown, obviously, me, Nick and Leon just spent a whole hour working on how to execute a DDT, which you would think is a basic move, but it's a lethal one, Jack the Snake's finisher. And we worked on that for maybe even an hour, just improving the execution of it, making it a pendulum-like movement rather than throw your legs up and wait to hit the ground, you know, doing it like Jake intended it to be done. Yeah, I've got many a protege, I would say, but in regards to taking over, it's not something that's crossed my mind, in that I'd like to be here for a long time, you know. Bob Barrett's still going into his 60s. Scrubber Daly's still going into his 60s. And even if I was to, you know, break both my shins and never be able to wrestle again tomorrow, I'd still want to promote. I'd still want to be around the business, because in honesty, it's all I've known since I was 15. It's all I've known, and I love it. And, you know, yes and no. I don't know if I've answered your question. I don't know. Right, last question to part one. This is part one of me Q&A, and this is the last question. It's off Pam Pugh. Hello, Pam. All right, mate. If someone is thinking of becoming a wrestler, what advice... I'll start again. If someone's thinking about becoming a wrestler, what advice would you give them? Okay. I'd say, don't do it. Don't do it. No, I'm joking. Lots of advice, really. I couldn't really justify that in a short YouTube clip, really. So imagine it's your first day, or you want it to be your first day, and you want to get into wrestling. The biggest piece of advice, and this is nothing to do with wrestling really, but it is. The biggest bit of advice I'd give you is 6 months before that, 12 months before that, whatever it is, get to the gym and get in shape. Get in shape so that you can take your first lessons in properly. Because I see lots of trainees come for their first session, they've got to do a bunch of squats and they've got to do a bunch of push-ups. And I know how society is today, so I'm not judging anybody. People in my era were brought up outside on the push bikes, you know, until the street lights come on, and then you'd race home. Children today are in front of Netflix and in front of a computer video game for hours on end, and I understand that the world's not as safe as it was, supposedly. I'm not sure it is, I don't know. And they're not as athletically minded or as fit as kids were. And what happens then, someone just walked past the house, what happens then is that they do these few push-ups and sit-ups and squats, you know, and all of that, and some of them are blown and gassed that much that they leave and they don't come back. And that's a shame, because who's to say that they wouldn't be good enough if they were a bit fitter or if they stuck it out, you know. And other people are that unfit and that gassed that they can't do and it's not very many that we do at our school. We'll only do 25 push-ups, 25 sit-ups, 25 squats, repeat that. So you've done 3 sets of everything, but in 3 groups, you're only doing 75 of each exercise. But unfortunately, there's some people out there at the moment that can't act that. No shame in that. I've been unfit many a time. There's no shame in that. But what I would say is get yourself fit to a reasonable level. That if you're paying £5 or £10, 15, 20, or if you're in America, £3,000 or something, you know, for a school to teach you, and you're that blown up and you're that unfit that you can't take any of the knowledge in, so you don't start learning to be a wrestler till 3 months in, because you'll learn your fitness, you know, but only for half an hour before each session every Saturday and every Tuesday or whatever day your school will do. And you don't start learning properly how to wrestle until you've got your fitness up, because once you've done that warm-up, I can see kids nowadays that blown and that gassed and that out of shape, that I'm going, okay, lock up now. They say you take an headlock and put your hands in this position and do this, do that, you know, and they can't take it in, bless them. You know, they can't take that information in. It's not their fault. It's lack of awareness. But my advice would be get yourself to a reasonable level of fitness. You don't have to be Linford Christie or Mal Farah, but get yourself to I realise you kids won't even know who Linford Christie is. Mal Farah's young. Yeah, get yourself fit so you can take it in. That would be it, really. And I've just been warned my phone's running out of memory, but that's good because that's the last question of this part. End of part 1. If you like it, I'll do part 2. Okay. Cheers, folks. I hope you're all right. Nice one. Cheers.